Welcome back to the Race Car and Chill YouTube channel. Today I'm going to make a quick step-by-step video on a coilover install for the IS300. This is what we're working on today. It's my buddy Adam's IS that we manual swapped, and I know before you guys ask, still working on that video. I'm sorry, I've been procrastinating because I've got hours worth of editing to do on it and I don't want to do it. But this is what we're installing today, CX Racing Coilovers. We're just going to get right into it. As you can see, we've already started, so I'm going to kind of bring you guys up to speed where we are. Obviously, take the wheel off. It's going to be a 21 millimeter for the lug nuts. And then the next thing we're going to do is come up to the top. This goes like this in the factory spot. This is two 10 millimeters, one bolt here and one nut here. Take that off. And then you're going to take these three 12 millimeter nuts off. And that's the top hat of your coilover loose. The other side is similar. Once you take those three 12 millimeters off, next you're going to come down here. Let me make sure you guys can see what I'm talking about. Right here where this bolt is already out, that's going to be a 17 millimeter bolt and a 17 millimeter nut on each side. It's going to be tight, so go ahead and power tools here would help you, but if not, give it a good kick and you should be able to get it off. This ABS sensor is also attached here with a 10 millimeter bolt. I took that off as well, and right now the coilover is loose, the stock coilover. However, it's not the knuckle will not come down enough to give us clearance. So what I'm going to do next is I've taken this 17 millimeter nut here off of the ball joint. There's a cotter pin in there as well, so I pulled the cotter pin out, take the nut out, and you should be able to hit this with a hammer and vibrate it loose, but we did not get so lucky. So I just ran to the parts store and I rented a ball joint separator. So we're gonna wedge the ball joint separator fork in there and hammer it and separate this ball joint. Then that should let the knuckle come down on us and give us enough clearance to pull out the old coilover. Bam! There we go. Okay, now that we got the ball joint separated from this bad boy here, we've got all the room in the world to pull out the stock coilover. Will you take that 12 off? It's hand tight. I put it on just to keep it up there. Okay. Now the coilover will pop right out. And there's your stock suspension. The fronts are super simple. Putting the new one on is literally as simple as just pulling the old one out and putting the new one in. You're gonna want to not lose these top hats here. You'll want to put it on the new coilover as well. If you don't, you may get a clunking sound. Okay, so here is the stock coilover compared to the CX Racing Coilover. As you can see, there's quite a bit of a difference in ride height. So what we're going to do is adjust these because we don't want to drop it, you know, this 4 inches or whatever the difference is. So to do so is pretty simple. You just unscrew this and you can see the thread will just come out. And then once you get it set to the right height you want, you'll lock it in place with this lowest collar here. We're not going to touch the preload, which is these two collars up here. We're just going to assume that the preload is going to be good from the factory. Okay, so for the front suspension, we did 27 threads here on each side of the front. That way we know at least the front will be level. It won't be, you know, sitting one side lower than the other. And we're going to see if that's going to be low enough after we get them installed on the car and put the car back on the ground. So as you can see, we put our top hat on the coilover before we put it in. And now we're just going to work it in right where the old one was. Okay, so it was much easier to get the whole knuckle lifted up if we lift both sides at the same time, mainly because the sway bar is still attached, and obviously the sway bar was fighting us. So when we lifted the whole thing all up at once, it went on there real easy for us. So I got the bolt in here. Obviously I don't have the nut in yet. We just had everything mocked up, and now we can go ahead and start assembling it. We're going to go ahead and tighten our ball joint here and put the cotter pin back in. We'll put the nut in on the 17 right here. And then we'll also mount our ABS sensor back to, it came with a little mount here. I'll install that next and show you guys. Okay, I've got everything put back together. As you can see, here's the ABS line. Maybe if you wanted to make this look a little bit better, you could flip this bolt around so you see the bolt, not the nut, but I wanted to be able to have the nut accessible. And I tightened up my top up here. Got those 12 millimeters put on with the igniter back in the stock spot. And I got my 17 tightened up in the bottom here that you won't be able to see at least. And we're ready to put the wheel back on, and the front will be done. Now, when I put the wheel on, I'm going to put a 2x4 under the wheel, so when we let it off the jack, and we are on jack stands, for the record, when we let the jack down, because the car's going to be so much lower, we might not be able to get the jack out from under the car. So we're going to put some 2x4s under the tire. Okay, so we got the car down on some 2x4s, and this is what it looks like with 27 threads on the CX Racing Coilovers. This is going to be too low for what we want, so we're going to put it back up in the air and raise it up some. Yeah, you're good. Alright, the front looks good. Now, we raised it about another inch from the 27 threads, and the spacing between the two collars is 3 inches exactly on the dot, so that's what 3 inches will look like. Okay, so for the rear, it's going to be a pretty similar experience here, except there's no control arms we have to worry about, which is going to be nice. We're going to take off these two 12 millimeters here, and then the bottom bolt is going to be a 19 instead of a 17, so the rear is a 19. We're going to take that off, and then I'll take you guys into the trunk to show you where the top hats get bolted to. Okay, now to get to the inside ones, you're going to have to pull this carpet back. There's just a couple plastic clips. And you're going to want to take these, there's supposed to be some nuts off here. I've already taken them off. They're 14 millimeter nuts. And then once you get these off, you are ready to come in and take the shock out. Now this is the hard part. You're going to need a helper to pry the whole knuckle down with everything. And these are going to be a tight fit to get out. A spring compressor may help in this case. We're not going to use one though. Okay, so for the rear, we had 3 inches and 9/16 on this little on the space between the collars here. We did not touch the preload as well on the rear. So we're gonna put the wheels on, let the car down on the ground, and see how the stance looks with 3 and 9/16 in the rear.
There she goes.
She's just barely almost tucking in the rear. No scrapes. Nice. And there we have it, guys. Thanks for watching. If you got this far, then hopefully you don't have any more questions. If you do, drop them in the comments below. I'll try to do my best to answer them. I should make a couple notes though. If you do end up lowering your car on coilovers, let the car settle for a day or two, because if they're brand new, if you're using used coilovers, you can get an alignment immediately. But if you're using brand new coilovers, make sure you wait a day or two to let the car settle and then go get an alignment. If you don't get an alignment, you're gonna chew through your tires within 1,000 miles tops. Like, you will ruin your tires. So try not to drive the car too much before getting an alignment. Another note I wanna make is those measurements I was telling you guys on the coilovers between the collars, that's only gonna be applicable to you if you're using CX Racing Coilovers. If you've got a different brand, their designs are different, so those measurements will be different for different brands. But yeah, thanks for watching, you guys.